Herb.
Yo, I don't think we should talk about this.
Come on, why not?
People might misunderstand what we're trying to say, you know? But that's okay.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's go.
Coitus. Giggity.
Making love, baby.
Sexy.
Can we just talk?
You're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the Voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome to Pleasurable Noise. I'm your host, DJ Rocky Lee Savage. Today we're going to learn all about ovulation health. My special guest is Maddie Sirouthay from the Ovee Health Podcast. So happy to have you here, Maddie. Let's get right into the first topic, sex ed. What is it you wish you learned in sex ed in the middle or high school that you didn't learn or wish you could go back in time and tell your teen self about now?
Probably to use a condom. So the reason that we co-founded Ovee, Sexual and Reproductive Health Platform, is because we realized that there is just a gap of knowledge and information at every stage of life. And a lot of people, once they hit their 20s and 30s, they're realizing how little they knew of their bodies. And that's because the education disparity that we receive when we're teenagers. So, just going back to your initial question, I would probably tell my teen self to use condoms, because even though you're a virgin, doesn't mean the people you're having sex with are. Also, get on birth control, even if it would make your mom mad. And I think I would also tell myself to find a support group my age who I can talk to openly about these things. I didn't feel comfortable talking to my mom about sex, anything having to do with my reproductive health. And also I wasn't totally comfortable talking to my friends about it. It never even crossed my mind to talk to my girlfriends about sex or our bodies, really.
So I understand you've got a pretty extraordinary last name. So tell me a little bit about your background and how conservative was your household? Because you said that you didn't really talk about sex in your household.
Yeah. So I was actually born and raised in Minnesota, but my family immigrated from Laos, which is this tiny country in Southeast Asia, bordered by Thailand and Cambodia. And my parents immigrated here when they were kids, so they actually met in the States. But they immigrated here with their families as a result of the Vietnam War, the second wave of refugees that came in the 80s from the Vietnam War and all the countries that were, destroyed by Western imperialism. So they were resettled in respectively Wisconsin and Minnesota, where I grew up. And yeah, it's a very, very pretty conservative household in terms of you don't really talk about your body that way. I remember when I first got my period, it was at a slumber party, and it was at the skating rink, and then we had a slumber party afterwards. But I got my period there. I was like, oh, I think this is my period. Just threw in a bunch of toilet paper and my underwear. And then the next morning I was like, hey mom, I think I got my period. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she went under the bathroom sink and gave me pads. And she's like, here, just put this on your underwear.
That's the
and change it when it's, yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. It just leaves you in an enigma. What do I do with this?
Yeah. She was, I think I figured it out, but I was like, okay, sure. And then I was so scared to use tampons for the first time. I played sports. My mom herself, I don't think to this day she doesn't use tampons, because those kind of intravaginal period products are considered pretty taboo, especially in Southeast Asia, more conservative parts of the world where that sort of an intravaginal product like that could, quote unquote, a woman's hymen.
Oh, yes. So the virginity is a very sacred thing in other countries because it's tied around religion and I guess purity. I get it.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's why my mom's own discomfort with buying me tampons and why she doesn't use them herself. Now she doesn't worry about the whole virginity thing, but just
well, because obviously you're older, so it's I expect you to understand these things by now.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I finally convinced her to buy me tampons because I think we had a swimming unit or something in gym, and I was like, I literally need this because I'm not gonna go in there and free bleed into the pool.
Actually, I was part of the swim team, and this girl, the first time she ever used tampons, put it in the wrong hole, and she's like, I think I put it in the wrong hole. I was like, oh my god. She's like, she's like, wait, guys, like which hole? I'm like, the one that is bleeding out of? Like maybe that one?
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier. It's just like there's just this general mysticism and taboo and like this hesitation to talk about the female body in a way that's not sexualized, like inherently sexual. Like there's nothing inherently sexual about, you know, having a period or like period products, but like when it comes to like things that go into your vagina, like we view things like going into our vaginas as something that's like, oh, that's like penetration, that's sexual, and anything that is penetrating you is inherently sexual, and therefore like
virginity, and now you're no longer sacred and you can't get married and you're this, that, and the third. I get it.
Like, but in reality, it's like we should be teaching people about like everything down there, because like it's not just the vagina, it's, you know, the labia, it's, you need to teach the difference between like an anus and a vagina, and so people aren't putting you know, tampons in their butt, like comprehensive sex ed.
Agreed. So you've heard of Ali Wong before, like have you
Yeah.
So she talks about HPV and the sense where like, you know, all of us have it, and I wish that like a lot like we were told that, because I was freaking out when I was like, oh my god, I've been diagnosed with HPV, I'm gonna die. So I'm literally that's literally my entire concept. But I'm gonna play you a clip, everybody, so don't be alarmed.
Everybody has HPV, okay? Everybody has it. It's okay. Come out already. Everybody has it. If you don't have it yet, you gon' get it. It's coming. You don't have HPV yet, you're a fucking loser. That's what that says about you. A lot of men don't know that they have HPV because it's undetectable in men. It's really up. HPV is a ghost that lives inside men's bodies and says boo in women's bodies. My doctor told me that I have one of two strains of HPV. Either I have the kind that's going to turn into cervical cancer, or I have the kind where my body will heal itself. Very helpful, this doctor, right? So basically, either I'm going to die or you're in the presence of Wolverine.
So basically, HPV is not something that is discussed, and like I guess now there's a vaccine for it, especially for I think women going into their teens. I'm having sex. A lot of people have mixed up the two words HPV and HIV, like the two acronyms go together, and I'm like, it's the problem where I understand where you say like you wanted to start your Ovee Health, because I even feel the same way with college students, that even though we're going to school to learn all these things, the very important thing like reproductive health is very important and something that we get as an elective here, and isn't recommended, even though it should, even though a lot of us can be affected by the different things that surround sex, like HIV to chlamydia to gonorrhea, and a lot of us don't know that it's happening because like a lot of those things, gonorrhea and chlamydia, are undetectable, and we don't know this. So what is this clip? How does it make you feel in terms of, you know, you teaching your listeners about sex and how you go about teaching sex?
I mean, that Ali Wong clip is obviously very funny, but it's very true. HPV, like she said, presents itself in people of all genders, and there's so many strains of HPV, like thousands of strains of HPV, which sounds scary, but you know, the majority of them are quote unquote harmless, meaning they're not gonna cause cancer. Right. And you were saying earlier, there are vaccinations that you can get when you're a teenager, and then you should be getting your booster vaccinations. The strains, there's going to be more, and they evolve and things like that. But the good thing about these vaccinations is that they prevent almost all of like really harmful forms of HPV, the ones that cause cancer especially. And when it comes to things that are sexually transmitted, we are big advocates of normalizing, talking about one's STD and STI status, talking about getting tested frequently. There's this taboo that, you know, if you get tested, it's not seen as a safety or health precaution. It's seen like a dirty thing, like you're dirty because you're getting tested, when in reality, like
I've
the more people
had
who
that
get
happen
tested,
to me. Like an older lady came up to me, and I told her I just wanted a basic testing because I know I've been dotting around. I was like, all right, I use condoms all the time, but I always want to know like if I'm safe, if I'm okay. And I told her, I'm like, this is the reason why I'm here. She looked at me funny, and I'm I'm trying to explain to her, because I get it, she's from an older generation where it's like, well, you know, as long as you're not doing a whole bunch of nasty things, then you're never gonna catch it. But like, you can catch it from your spouse, because you don't know if your spouse is sleeping around or whatever the situation is. It's 2019, everyone's got multiple relationships and things going on, and they change their mind, and everyone doesn't want to stick to the same thing. I get it. So we're a little bit more open about it. But to me, I felt like me sitting there, it showed that, like, you know, regardless of whether or not somebody's gonna shame me or not, I want to know what my health status is. I want other people to know what their health status is, because, you know, these things are very important. I want to be able to have kids in the future. Not right now, but in the future. So, like, I want to be able to make sure that those things are set and in place, and also that I'm not, like, frothing from my vagina some weird type of disease. I want to be clean. I want to be secure in the fact that my body's right when, you know, I'm going out into the world. You agree?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the voice of NASA Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, DJ Rocky Lee Savage. Today, we are talking with Maddie Sirouthay from the Ovee Health Podcast about ovulation health. So, let's change gears. We're going to start school for the day. Okay, so we're going to talk about periods. Now, you talked about your period happening in a slumber party. This for me, I found it in the library, and I called my mom immediately. I wish she explained it to me earlier, because at least maybe I would have, like, kept some type of material, because I was running around for hours trying to, like, ask people that I didn't even know, and they were just looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And explain to me what endometriosis is, because a lot of women go through this, and I feel like it's a period topic that we never really speak about.
So what happens when you have your period is the uterine lining sheds itself. So during your menstrual cycle, your whole reproductive system, like your ovaries and your uterus, is priming itself in preparation for a sperm to latch on. But when that doesn't happen, it has to shed. And so when that sheds, that's our period. However, people with endometriosis, that lining grows on the outside of their uterus. All that happens. And it's a very, very painful experience. The reason why it's painful, we associate that kind of pain, just an inherent truth. If you have a uterus, that periods are painful. And when they go seek treatment or help from doctors, or maybe they just wait until the pain is so debilitating, they're either dismissed as like, oh, it's just your period. Right. Here's some like extra strength, whatever, painkillers. The median time elapsed for when someone starts experiencing endometriosis symptoms to the time that they're actually like diagnosed with endometriosis is 7 years. And so that's theoretically 12 times 7, whatever that number is. I'm not good at math, but
neither am I. It's okay.
Like those many cycles of just debilitating pain and then just constantly being dismissed of like, oh, it's just period pain. Some like at-home remedies that you can do to take care of the cramps and not this actual debilitating condition. It's a very, very lonely and isolating experience for those who have endometriosis, because there's just this culture of not believing women. Examination rooms, especially if you're a woman of color, Black women are disproportionately affected by this kind of prejudice in the examination room, where their pain is often dismissed and not taken seriously.
I mean, why do you think is that? Is because of the fact that a lot of the times, and it's not just Black women, I feel like the LGBT community goes through a lot of scrutiny when it comes to healthcare. I feel like a lot of the times they can't get hormone therapy, or a lot of religious reasons why doctors don't want to perform any type of surgery on them because it's against my religion or so on and so forth. And it shouldn't even be just that. I heard that as a healthcare professional, regardless of your religion, you are there to help somebody, and especially help someone get better. So if like a person comes in there, regardless of their race, color, or gender identity, they should not be refused healthcare. Even as a Black woman, I've gone through a lot of situations where like I've go for therapy, and a lot of people will tell me, hey, you don't need therapy. Therapy is for people who are crazy. And I'm like, it's not that I'm crazy. It's sometimes I have anxiety or have a hard time focusing, and I need to go to the root of it. But to me, everyone's just like, push it to the side, keep moving on. It's okay, strengthen it out. And I'm like, that's not the way you should go about things, especially when it comes to our body. It starts escalating. It starts getting worse. When I needed to go to therapy is when I started getting really bad migraines, and I couldn't understand why. It's because I was like, all right, I'm extremely stressed, and I needed to get to the point of why I was stressed, and it was like my therapist was like, it's just a chemical imbalance. You feel anxious all the time because you're getting into your adult age and you're getting more hormones as you're getting, towards your 30s, you're getting that childbearing age. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But I don't know these things if I don't then get help. So explain to me abnormal signs you would see or feel that you should be worried about when it comes to your period or like cervix.
Sure. So, I mean, it's hard because everyone's body is super different. And if it gets to the point where your pain is debilitating, like you cannot move, if it's, like an 8, 9, 10 on the pain scale, you should, go see a gynecologist. If your flow is extraordinarily heavy for the majority of your period, I mean, you should go see your gynecologist. I'm going to list a lot of these things that it's either you're probably fine, but you should get it checked out anyways. Like, for instance, I have extremely heavy flow, and that can be defined as releasing the amount of fluid you release on your period being upwards of, I think it's 60 milligrams or something like that in a cycle. Right. But basically, or it could be defined as you're soaking through a super plus tampon in less than 2 hours frequently. That's defined as a heavy flow. Or menorrhagia. That's something that you should ask your gynecologist about. On the flip side, if you're experiencing a very, very light flow on the opposite end, like a light tampon, you're barely getting through that, and that's the majority of your cycle. So basically, if your cycle is very, very heavy and very, very short, or if it's pretty long but very light, is when you should be talking to your gynecologist. Like I said, everyone's bodies is different. Like what's normal for you in your uterus isn't normal for someone else. So if you're noticing drastic changes in your cycle, like if you have a fairly mild cycle, but suddenly you're bleeding very heavily, then be a good idea to talk to a gynecologist about that. For instance, I recently saw my gynecologist because my cycle has been mostly pretty regular, but then it started to be where I was like on my period every other week or every 2 weeks, and I didn't understand what was going on. And she checked me out, and there wasn't anything wrong with me biologically, but it was probably attributed to stress because at the time I was completing my master's degree, had a lot of deadlines going, and so there's other external factors that can affect your cycle, whether it's strenuous exercise or physical activity or stress that can cause hormone imbalances and then in turn affect your cycle.
So that was the sound for the word of the day. So I feel like this is a great segue to talk about this one. Ready for the drum roll? Let me know you're ready for the drum roll. We gotta be excited. We're excited about learning.
Yeah, I'm ready. Bring it.
Got it. So drum roll. So the word of the day is polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yay.
So polycystic ovarian syndrome, can you explain to me and my listeners what exactly that is?
Yeah, so basically polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS, is an imbalance of reproductive hormones that result in the formation of cysts on the ovaries, which again, first symptom that people experience when they're figuring out that they have PCOS is very painful and debilitating periods.
Right, so like you talked about before, is that you have these cycles where you have heavy periods, and a lot of the times they are told, and a lot of these women that are told that they have PCOS is that they're infertile and they're incapable of having children. So I mean, I know I've seen it, your listeners ask you, does it make you feel less of a woman, or in your opinion, would it make you feel less of a woman if you were told that you can no longer have kids?
It honestly, for me personally, I think it would affect me emotionally and mentally in some sort of way. I personally am making the choice to not have children, but I don't know. I guess there's a maybe with the right person at the right time, and I have all these resources, or I have a change of heart. Yeah, it'd be nice to have that option on the table. But I know that a lot of culturally and socially speaking, a lot of a woman's worth is tied to her ability to reproduce and be a mother. And, growing up, if you're assigned female at birth, you're basically being primed to be a caretaker. And then, to have that sort of identity that was thrust upon you, and then maybe you've accepted it or grown into it, or you want that for yourself, which is totally 100% valid. And to have that kind of taken away from you, yeah, absolutely. I can see how being infertile would greatly impact someone emotionally and mentally speaking.
I understand. I feel like a lot of the times we're just told told that we have a biological clock. It's ticking. You need to be in college, you need to be married, and you need to have kids. And that's the path that we all need to go by. But then I guess we got to remind our listeners that a lot of the times we all have our own different paths, and you kind of have to go with whatever works for you in a sense. And it's a matter of like whatever preference or whatever your path is going to take you is going to make the outcome. You're listening to Pleasurable Noise on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, DJ Rocky Lee Savage. Today, we are talking with Maddie Sirouthay from the Ovee Health Podcast about ovulation health. I've seen you test out the different types of, birth controls. Can you tell me something about some of them?
Yeah, so I started my birth control journey when I was a freshman in college. So I never had any sort of talk with my mom about this stuff, but like one of the most affirming things she said to me before I went, she's like, go figure out your birth control stuff. Like, I guess just having that okay from her helped me feel more confident, even though I essentially did not get any guidance from her, even though I don't know what she really could have given me because she was never on birth control and whatever. She was having kids from a very young age.
Right.
But I knew that I was a very forgetful person and I did not want to take the pill every single day. And so I did my research. I went to my school student health center and I spoke with a nurse and I did my research. I was like, I was thinking about the patch, which is basically like nicotine patches, but for birth control. I was thinking about that or the shot, which I was kind of more wary toward because I don't like being injected, generally speaking. But the thing with the patch is, it's an adhesive. It can come off if you sweat, if you work out a lot, whatever. So I ended up going with a shot.
How long do you keep this patch on?
That's a good question. I don't really remember. I don't think it's always, but I'm not entirely sure. But it was not a very reliable form of birth control. And so I went with the Depo-Vera, which is a hormonal shot that you get every 3 months. I got it in my butt. I did not know you could get it in your arm. I went like 2 years of getting it in my butt, and then I talked to someone else. They didn't go to the same school as me. I talked to a friend from home, and she's like, I have the Depo-Vera too. Like, it sucks getting that shot in my arm every whatever.
You're
I'm like, wait, you can get it in your arm? I was like, I've been like pantsing myself.
Now, I would like to introduce a new segment because we're nearing the end of the show. It's called There's No Such Thing as Stupid Questions. So you know what that's all about because I actually got it from a professor who always would say that, but then say it's a stupid question if I asked it. So, are you ready?
Sure.
So, is virginity real?
I don't think that's a stupid question. I'm going to say, it's not real. It's this whole social construct that's basically around a penis penetrating a vagina. And I think having sex for the first time it can be a very monumental and important moment in one's life. But the concepts of virginity and saving oneself and that you're pure and clean until quite literally the seal is broken, like your hymen is broken, that whole thing to me
That's weird because I had a conversation with my friend the other day. I'm like, how's your virginity real? So what is it to lesbians if they lost their virginity because they don't have a penis? Yeah. So I'm confused. Yeah. So how did they lose their virginity? And it was just like a dead silence. I'm like, yeah, because you can't explain it to me, can you?
Again, virginity is this whole misogynistic, patriarchal concept that, of course, only applies to women and religion. Yeah, as a tool, virginity as a tool to suppress women and their sexuality and their worth as it relates to men. But I really do want to make a clear distinction between that whole thing of virginity, having sex for the first time. That is an experience that's very much real, and you can put as little or as much importance on it as you want. Me losing my virginity, I was at a house party, and me and my boyfriend, we might as well. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, whatever. I've always been that kind of person about sex, where it wasn't inherently very personal, or emotional to me. Okay. But again, that's just me. And there's still people now who they want their first time to be special with someone that they love and care for and trust. And then after that, they continue to only want to have sex with people who they feel that deep emotional connection with. And both sides of the spectrum are completely valid. But it's when you start attributing things like purity or morality to it. If you have a lot of sex, then you're a slut and you don't care about your body and you have loose morals because you're a loose woman. When we start attributing those sorts of things to sexuality is when it gets up.
So, what is the importance of masturbation, Professor?
I personally think it's very important. I think you should definitely explore your own body and figure out what works for you. So when or if you end up with a partner and you're getting intimate, you can communicate with them and tell them, like, this is what I like, this is what works for me. And then having that open line of communication and understanding your body and helping them understand your body as well, you know, it creates a very harmonious sexual experience.
Another question. Ready? Mm-hmm. What does peeing do after sex? I don't get it.
We were actually just talking about this. So basically, this common saying, like, you have to pee after sex or else you'll get a UTI. And, you know, there's been a lot of discussion around whether or not that's actually really true, if it does prevent UTIs or whatever. And it really is just dependent on if you're prone to UTIs, like the length of your urethra. If your urethra is shorter, then you're going to be more prone to UTIs. And if you aren't peeing after sex, then, you know, all that bacteria from all the fluids that were being exchanged, it has a shorter pathway to travel up to infect your urinary tract and all that. Honestly, peeing after sex never hurts. And so I recommend that everyone does it, but whether it's, you know, factually supported that it actually prevents UTIs or whatever is kind of, you know, depends on your body. I personally am very prone to UTIs, and I find that when I don't pee after sex, or if I just like fall asleep after sex, the next morning I'm like waking up in pain. It's one of those things where it doesn't hurt.
So it's the end of class. Is there anything you would like to promote before we go?
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. We're at Ovee Health. That's OVEE Health. And then our website, where I talked about all these different articles where we talk to people about their specific experiences with HPV, endometriosis, PCOS, even those home remedy for yeast infections. That's ovee.me. Reach out to us. Where the chances of you emailing us or hopping into our DMs or our comments, the likelihood that you're going to be talking to me is pretty high. Also, feel free to slide into our DMs if you have any other burning questions. That's what we're here for.
So we're all out of time. I want to thank my guest, Maddie Sirouthay from the Ovee Health Podcast, for being here today. This has been Pleasurable Noise. My name is DJ Rocky Lee Savage. If you missed parts of the show or want to hear other episodes, please find the Pleasurable Noise Podcast on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can email me at pleasureablenoise@gmail.com. That's pleasureablenoise@gmail.com. We'll talk to you again next week, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.